From start to finish, the star-studded UFC Fight Island was graced by many of the Octagon favorites, from current champions, former champions, Octagon legends, fan favorites, and even some many new young up-and-comers that people had no idea even existed that made a name for themselves on Fight Island. Over the course of like 2.5, 3 weeks, the UFC put on 4 total fight cards, the first one being UFC 251, booked with 3 title fights, headlined by Masvidal vs. Usman. 4 days later, you had the Kattar vs. Ige card, which is where we were first introduced to our subject of this video, Khamzat Chimaev. And then 3 days later, you had the Benavidez vs. Figueiredo card for the Flyweight Championship. And then following that, exactly 1 week later, for the quickest turnaround in UFC history, the quickest turnaround for wins in UFC history as well, on the Till vs. Whitaker card, you had Khamzat Chimaev returning, facing off against Reese McKee, in which he went out and put on another stellar performance, which I'll talk about here very soon. And I'm sure if any of you guys follow any of my videos, you've watched my previous videos, you follow MMA to any extent online, social media, news, anything like that, I'm sure you guys have seen everyone talking about this guy. They've mentioned his name, interviews, whatever. And if some of you guys don't know who this guy is, you're probably wondering, who in the world is Khamzat Chimaev? Chimaev is a Russian-born, undefeated MMA fighter with a record of 8-0. He has a very, very strong background in wrestling. He pretty much has wrestled his whole entire life, began training at the age of 5. And he mentioned that growing up in Chechnya, he would often get into a lot of street fights in his youth and his teenage years, and that's kind of where he developed his knack and his skill for fighting. He would eventually go on to move to Sweden with his family when he was around the age of 19, and he continued to live and train there in Sweden. And he mentioned in an interview with Brett Okamoto from ESPN MMA that while living in Sweden, he competed in the Swedish National Championships for freestyle wrestling, winning that 6 times. And originally, he had no intentions of ever training or fighting in MMA. Mentioned that how it scared him. He didn't want to get hit in the head, the brain damage, CT, all that stuff he wanted to stay away from. Until one day, one of his friends kind of offered, if he wanted to go train at All Stars MMA, and he told him, I don't want to do MMA, I don't want to get hit in the head, all this stuff. And he basically told him, no, we're just going to train wrestling with the MMA guys. It'll be fun. You'll get some good experience, some good looks, all this stuff. So he agreed. They went, and it turns out they showed up for the pro practice at All Stars MMA. And a little side note, if some of you guys don't know what All Stars MMA is, it's probably the top gym in Sweden for MMA. A lot of the big Swedish fighters that have come out of there are like Alexander Gustafsson, Ilir Latifi, and I guess now Khamzat Chimaev. And while at that practice, he must have done pretty well, put on a pretty good performance, and impressed a lot of the coaches. Afterwards, the coaches came up to him asking him, what promotion do you fight for? Who do you fight under? All this stuff, asking him, and he basically told him, I don't fight. Honestly, it scares me, and this is my first time ever even stepping into an MMA gym. And they were impressed. Pretty much just offered him, you can continue training if you want to. And I guess pretty much the rest is history. He began his MMA career in 2018, around the beginning of 2018, and during that year, he quickly amassed a record of 4-0. With his first few fights being with IRFA and Fight Club Rush for his first 2 fights, and then the next 4 were with Brave CF, which is actually a pretty well-known promotion around like the Middle East and Europe. And I believe that during this time he may have won a championship with Brave CF. I cannot find any documentation, like anything in writing, saying he did win a world title with Brave CF, but there are multiple pictures online of him holding belts from Brave CF. There's even some with him holding 2 belts, so he could have potentially been a double champ in Brave CF. Mentioning that too, that he wants to do that in the UFC. He wants to be a double champ of 170 and 185. So maybe he did that in Brave CF. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to carry those accolades over to the UFC. But quickly amassed a record of 6-0 before entering the UFC, all by finishes. And even offered around this time last year when his teammate Ilir Latifi was scheduled to face off against Volkan Ozdemir. Latifi had to step out of that fight due to injury. Chimaev actually offered to step in on a very short notice on a 205-pound fight against a former title challenger in Volkan Ozdemir, which, if that doesn't show you how game of a fighter this guy is, then I really don't know what will. He will literally fight anybody, whenever, wherever, it doesn't matter. He says that a lot in his interviews, and I really believe that he means that. He would eventually get his call to enter the UFC in 2020 with a fight scheduled to face off against John Phillips on Fight Island. In that fight, he completely smashed John Phillips. He took him down probably within the first 10 seconds. I would say after probably the first minute and a half, 2 minutes, Phillips looked like he was in a 15-minute war because Chimaev just literally beat him up that bad. Somehow Phillips survived the first round. And then they go into the second round. Chimaev took him down, just completely smashed him again. Ended up submitting him with a Darce choke in the second round. During that fight, Chimaev completely outstruck Phillips 124-2. And then following that, 10 days later, his next performance against Rhys McKee, Chimaev did the same thing, took his opponent down probably within the first couple seconds of the fight, actually took him all the way across the cage, picked him up, took him all the way across the cage, set him down in his own corner so he could hear what his coaches are saying, and just completely beat the snot out of Rhys McKee. Rhys McKee didn't even get a single strike off, let alone a single stat at all on Chimaev. Chimaev completely smashed him, 68 strikes to nothing. So over the course of his 2 fights, Chimaev has outstruck his opponents like 190-something to 2. So he's pretty much taken like minimal to no damage over the 2 fights in his UFC career. And he's looked really impressive. In a time where there's a lot of eyes on the UFC watching these particular events, I feel like this was the right time for him, at perfect time, and it could have gone any better. And now everybody is talking about him. When probably 3-4 weeks ago, no one had no idea who Khamzat Chimaev was, including myself. His very grappling-heavy, smashing-like style draws a lot of comparisons to Khabib. A lot of people are calling him Khabib 2.0, and I could most definitely see those comparisons, but I also think there's something about Chimaev's game that is very different. I can't exactly pinpoint it. I believe it has something to do with his size. He's a lot longer and a lot lankier than Khabib. If any of you guys know anything about grappling or anything like that, there's a certain advantage that being long has versus being short. Obviously, certain body styles have different advantages, but I feel like there's something that comes with his length that makes his grappling just a little bit different. I don't want to say better, but just a little bit different. Even his striking, too, I feel like his striking, he has a little bit more pop in his shots, but I feel like if he develops those skills, especially training at a gym like All Stars with someone like Gustafsson, who's as good as a striker as Gustafsson is, I think he could learn a lot, and I think he could be very dangerous in the future. It'll be very interesting to see who they face him up against next, because we'll really see what this guy's made of when he starts stepping up against better competition, starts getting in those rankings, and I really would not be surprised if things keep going the way they're going. He keeps smashing people and he keeps winning. I would not be surprised if he would be fighting for a title around this time next year, or have already fought for a title, because I feel like he's going to want to keep that momentum going. He's probably going to try to fight as much as he possibly can. It'll be interesting to see when he steps in the octagon again. I really would not be surprised if we see him in the octagon here very soon. So if any of you guys did miss his fights and you're wondering who this guy is, now you know. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, though. I know it's kind of different from what I normally do, but I'm going to try to start doing stuff like this more often, talk about like some prospect previews, up-and-coming fighters, or some fighters that you may not know about to look out for. I'm going to try doing this more often, so if you guys have any fighters you guys want me to cover, any videos, let me know in the comment section below. If you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to share, like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me grow this channel. It really gives me some good feedback. Let me know that you guys enjoy these videos. And until next time, I will catch you guys later.